right, so today we're going to be getting into some very genuinely difficult issues for people, not intellectually but more emotionally. There are some issues here that hit people's hearts, usually the first time they hear about this. But I'd much rather you hear about this from a Christian worldview and perspective than hear about it from a skeptic that's going to try and twist it to your destruction.
And friends, that's what I want to share with you today in this video. I know it was long. I pray that it will bless you. I pray that you'll be able to use this to reach out to family and friends about changes, and then lead them into a discussion about the Bible changes. There's not much time, friends. Be strong and courageous. Do not fear or be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Until next time.
Now, you folks are examples of those who see the cloud. You know that Jehovah, not the imperfect men that he's using, is in total control. And we humans find it generally difficult for change, as you heard in our dear brother Morris's comments. But Jehovah's people, from the days of Abraham down to our day, have seen that we've had to be humble, flexible, and obedient. We must maintain spiritual vision. We have to see the cloud. Jehovah watches how we display submission and loyalty to his organization. Now, in the United States branch territory, there's an ongoing effort to better utilize kingdom halls. And this has resulted in many publishers being assigned to different congregations. More to come. Now, commenting on the general benefits, here's what one circuit overseer said. This lets the friends know how to rely on Jehovah. This woke a lot of people up. Learn obedience, submissiveness, and how to follow direction. The elders and ministerial servants did an excellent job of demonstrating this. The friends will even more learn to a greater degree as they assimilate into their new congregations. Interesting. Think about it. During the wilderness trek, Jehovah might have moved the cloud in the middle of the night, and their locations may not have seemed logical from a human standpoint. Why would Jehovah do such a thing? We don't know. Maybe he could see the movement of enemy camps of Israel. Whatever the case, it's vital that they would have responded promptly. All of us today need to see the cloud as we get closer to the Great Tribulation. The time is now when we have to obey and not ask, why did they make that decision? As one traveling overseer said, don't put a question mark where Jehovah puts a period. You, dear students, have already shown prompt response to direction that Jehovah's organization has provided. Please, do it more fully. And to the extent that you do, Jehovah will continue to bless you. Don't see the men that Jehovah's using. See the cloud. And may all of us do the same.
And in this video, we're going to be taking a look at numerous Mandela effects since June of 2016. And I decided to do a compilation because I think it's a great tool to be able to use to wake people up that the world is changing and that we're finding really crazy logo changes and name changes and words to music and quotes are changing, and we're finding new animals, new flowers, new landscapes, new sea creatures in our Bibles, and so much more as a rewriting history and rewriting the world around us using quantum computers, D-Wave technology. It's shocking. Now, I'm firmly convinced they could not change the Bible, the Christian story, without changing the world around us. So this video is going to just cover an array of various changes. And I think that some of these might be a surprise to you, because some of them I just came across. So, let's go ahead and get started. There's a lot.
Ecclesiastes 1:2-11. Meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher. Utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. What do people gain from all their labors at which they toil under the sun? Generations come and generations go, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun sets and hurries back to where it rises. The wind blows to the south and turns to the north. Round and round it goes, ever returning on its course. All streams flow into the sea, yet the sea is never full. To the place the streams come from, there they return again. All things are wearisome, more than one can say. The eye never has enough of seeing, nor the ear its fill of hearing. What has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun. I don't think we need to follow a cloud, look for a Mandela effect, because there's nothing new under the sun. Is there anything of which one of you can say, look, this is something new? It was here already, long ago. It was here before our time. No one remembers the former generations, and even those yet to come will not be remembered by those who follow them. Matthew 16:2-4. He replied, when evening comes, you say, it will be fair weather, for the sky is red, and in the morning today it will be stormy, for the sky is red and overcast. You know how to interpret the appearance of the sky, but you cannot interpret the signs of the time. A wicked and adulterous generation looks for a sign, but none will be given it except the sign of Jonah. And Jesus then left and went away. Joshua 24:15. But if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve, whether the gods or your ancestors served beyond the Euphrates, or the gods of the Amorites, in which land you are living. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord.
So there are some issues. In fact, what we're going to talk about is like how the Bible was changed. I'll put it that way, but that really is, this is how the skeptic would put it. The skeptic would put it this way, how the Bible was changed. To be more accurate, though it's less of a clickbait title, the true issue here is where the manuscripts disagree. Where the ancient manuscripts disagree about what our New Testament should say. Now, we talked a lot about that last time. We went over the number of variations. There's like 400,000 variations amongst our over 20,000 manuscripts. We have that. We have over 20,000 copies, about 5,800 plus in Greek alone, of our New Testament, different parts of the New Testament, not necessarily the whole New Testament 5,000 or 20,000 times. Now, what we do is we reconstruct the original from these. This is just review. We reconstruct the original New Testament from these leftover manuscript copies of it. Now, like I said, there's about 400,000 variants. We went in detail last time about how this number is used out of context to deceive people, to imply that we have no idea what the original Bible said, which is not remotely true.
Deuteronomy 19:15. One witness is not enough to convict anyone accused of any crime or offense they may have committed. A matter must be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. 2 Corinthians 13:1-4. This will be my third visit to you. Every matter must be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. I already gave you a warning when I was with you the second time. I now repeat it while absent. On my return I will not spare those who sinned earlier or on any of the others, since you are demanding proof that Christ is speaking through me. He is not weak in dealing with you, but is powerful among you. For to be sure he was crucified in weakness, yet he lives by God's power. Likewise, we are weak in him, yet by God's power we will live with him and are dealing with you.
Scholarly to say something like that. The number is actually really small. Given that we have over 20,000 copies, you would expect a lot more than 400,000 variants normally, especially because even one letter being different here than over here, that's a variant. And so you'd expect this number to be a lot higher than it is. But it's not just the number itself. The number's sort of pointless because that includes things like obvious slips of the pen, spelling errors, stuff you can't even translate out of Greek into English. And so 99% of the issues that are in these 400,000 variants are non-issues, meaning they don't affect our question about what's really is in the isn't the originals of the New Testament. They don't have any bearing on what the original said. Less than 1% are what you would consider something we should really think about. Well, tonight we want to talk about specifically those ones, the ones we should really think about. Last week I talked about the ones we don't need to worry about. Now let's talk about the ones we might quote-unquote worry about, although I'm not personally worried. But before we do that, I just want to try to put it into perspective. When I use big numbers like 400,000, even I don't know what that means, okay? I mean, just giant numbers, we get lost in giant numbers. So if you could break it down, this is a little bit of a simplification, but I think that's what we need to understand the issue. If you could break it down, you look at, we've got about, for any particular verse in the New Testament, we have on average 1,600 accounts of that verse in history through our manuscripts. About 1,600 accounts of that verse. Now, if you consider 1,600 for each verse by 400,000 variants, what it comes down to is this. If you broke it down really simply, imagine if we only had 2 copies of the New Testament. 2 ancient copies, and in those ancient copies, they had variations in 250 places altogether. So we have a copy here, there's 250 places where they disagree with each other in some way. 99% of those variations don't matter. They're spelling errors, or it's obvious slip of the pen, things like that, just word order being moved around, stuff that doesn't affect in Greek, doesn't matter. And so what you end up having is 2 or 3 places of difficulty between these 2 manuscripts. That's the more accurate summary of our 400,000 variations that the skeptics often like to talk about. The large number of copies is why we have so many variants, which is why we can be so confident about the original. The variants aren't a problem. We have great confidence about the original. I like what Dan...
Because Jeremiah 8:8, how can you say we are wise, for that we have the law of the Lord, when actually the lying pen of the scribes is handled falsely, is true? We can rest in Matthew 24:35. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away.